Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Hakem. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And I've got to say, you are a chatty bunch this morning. We got a lot of viewer comments. We've got some breaking news, not just on Iran, but also on some New York State issues, some general issues. We're going to get to those early on in the broadcast. Do have a couple of New York State updates for later on as well. Do you happen to see the video that was released of the Epstein deposition with the Clintons? I would love to hear your take on that if you did. But let's go to viewer comments to kick off this morning's broadcast. Jack says, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Jack. I watched Chuck Schumer speak on the Iran operations. I could see he's trying to hold down a smile. If President Trump doesn't get control of this Iran mess, I'm afraid it will grow worse than Vietnam, unless the people of Iran can succeed to stand up to help themselves. I see this becoming another Vietnam War. Trump got cocky in South America, and it's still not done. Mexico is not calm. The illegal issue here is not done. Now he's talking about Cuba. There's way too many rabbits to try to pull out of this MAGA hat. God save him. God save the Republican Party from disaster. Trump needs to step back and put things into Congress to help decide what to do from here out. Chuck's glee is because he can feel the power coming back to the Democratic Party. Interesting take, Jack. We appreciate that this morning. Comment from Mark, who also writes in good morning. Well, good morning to you, Mark. President Trump said Iran hasn't seen anything yet. The big wave is coming soon. And he's not ruling out U.S. troops on the ground. He also said this war could go on for 4 to 5, even longer weeks, 4 to 5 weeks or longer, if needed. Thank you, Mark. Comment from a different viewer saying, morning. Well, good morning. Daylight savings time this weekend. No word from the president about whether it will be eliminated. But after all, he does have a war to deal with. Yes, we haven't heard much about that, other than that surprise vote years ago now. That I think it had to go back to the House, was it? And wasn't Marco Rubio actually kind of full circle? Wasn't he kind of instrumental in that? I'm trying to think of at the time. But yes, nothing's been said of that for quite some time. Now, this is the time change where we lose an hour of sleep. This is when people will be grumpy and demand change, and nothing will happen. All right, comment from a different viewer. Trump has almost done away with 2 dictatorships. The only ones left are Cuba, New York, and California, saving the worst for last. An unidentified source is saying you will be starting a 24/7, 365 program next month. Congrats. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. No, I think we have enough media, enough news, that we could fill nearly that. But no, I don't think that is on the docket, though. I do appreciate it. And finally, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Look at all these good mornings and waves. Let's use the Dems' own words. This is not an illegal war. It's an undocumented war. Have a great day. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. All right, so Trump bragged late last night, just really couple of hours before we went on the air, that the U.S. has a virtually unlimited supply of medium-grade munitions and proclaimed America is ready to win big in an ominous warning to the Iranian regime. Saying late last night on True Social, early this morning, the United States munition stockpiles have, at the medium and upper medium range, never been higher or better. As was stated to me today, we have a virtually unlimited supply of these weapons. Wars can be fought forever and very successfully using just these supplies, which are better than other countries' finest arms. At the highest end, we have a good supply, but are not where we want to be. He said additional high-grade weaponry is stored for us in outlying countries, and he blamed former President Joe Biden for the stockpile not being what it should have been. Saying sleepy Joe Biden spent all his time and our country's money giving everything to P.T. Barnum, Zelensky, of Ukraine, hundreds of billions of dollars worth. And while he gave so much of the super high-end away for free, he didn't bother to replace it. He then proclaimed that Trump rebuilt the military during his first term before revealing the United States is stocked and ready to win big. He also boasted about U.S. military might. Later on, U.S. forces have destroyed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps command and control facilities. This is Central Command at this point, saying Iranian air defense capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and military airfields during sustained operations. We will continue to take decisive action against immediate, imminent threats posed by the Iranian regime. Now, Trump told CNN yesterday, to Mark's point, we haven't even started hitting them hard. The big wave hasn't even happened. The big one is coming soon. Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoing what Trump had to say. Quote, the next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. We will do this as long as it takes to achieve those objectives. And we will achieve those objectives. The world will be a safer place when we're done with this operation. Rubio refused to share a precise timeline, but Trump estimated Operation Epic Fury could take 4 weeks. He also said the big one is coming if necessary. He pledged to continue the U.S. campaign against that Islamist regime until it was completely defanged, despite the costs. So far, we have lost 6 U.S. service members. I read that Iran has lost, that we killed about 700, and what was the number? According to the Iran, I can't remember the exact number, and I knew I should have saved it in front of me. Somewhere around 787 Iranians. And we have, as has been confirmed this morning, we have lost 6 U.S. service members. We pray for their families at this difficult time. Thank them for giving the ultimate sacrifice. Now, Iran has attacked all the U.S. allies in the region in retaliation for the assaults, launching drones and ballistic missiles at every nation in the Persian Gulf, as well as Iraq, Israel, and even Cyprus. More than 48 hours after the U.S.'s Operation Epic Fury began, with the assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei and dozens of other of his top goons, America is not finished with its bombardment campaign, Trump told Jake Tapper. We're knocking the, we'll say heck out of them. I don't know. I guess I could say that word, but I'm not going to. I think it's going very well. It's very powerful. We haven't even started hitting them hard. The big wave hasn't even happened. The big one is coming soon. Now, he also, yesterday, Trump wouldn't rule out sending U.S. troops into Iran if necessary. That's what he told the New York Post. But said the Operation Epic Fury was way ahead of schedule. I don't have the yips with respect to boots on the ground like every president says. There will be no boots on the ground. I don't say it. I say probably don't need them, or if they were necessary. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said at a Monday morning Pentagon press conference that no American troops are currently inside Iran, though he also did not rule out the possibility, saying, quote, President Trump ensures our enemies understand we'll go as far as we need to go to advance American interests, but we're not dumb about it. You don't have to roll 200,000 people in there and stay for 20 years. Again, Trump saying it's going to go pretty quickly. We're right on schedule, way ahead of schedule in terms of leadership. 49 killed, and that was, going to take, we figured, at least 4 weeks, and we did it in one day. Yeah, someone, I can't remember who it was. It was a former general, I believe, but the kind of cockiness or arrogance or ignorance of Iran's leadership, of the regime, all meeting in one place, nearly all of them meeting in one place, made it an easy opportunity for the United States. Now, there's other breaking news that we're going to get to, and then we're going to talk more about Iran, because there is a lot of, not just news there. Oh, look at all those waves. Sorry about that. Not just the news, the breaking news, but also there's a lot of kind of talking heads and politicians, what they have to say. I think that's worth looking at as well. I know the mainstream media is presenting this as not supported by the American people. There's been a lot of kind of hit pieces out in the media about the president and about getting involved with Iran. And it's a weird defense, and I have a couple op-eds about that we may get to later on. Also, we'll give you the details when we return. But great news breaking late yesterday that the Democrats' scheme to redraw New York City's lone GOP-held House seat, Nicole Malatakis' seat. We've talked a lot about this as of late. That has been blocked by the Supreme Court. We'll tell you more about that when we return. That is a big news story. Then we're going to dive into a couple other quick stories. Then Iran, more New York State. Today, actually, this is going to sound shocking, and it's not around here, but some of the midterm fun is beginning. Primaries are today to pick nominees for November's midterm elections. The most high-profile races are in Texas, where incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn faces tough competition from State Attorney General Ken Paxton, Representative Wesley Hunt, and others in a primary that's expected to end in a runoff. On the Democrat side, yes, U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett and State Representative James Tellerico are also in a close race, along with a third candidate that this article doesn't even mention. So that will be interesting to watch. That we'll have coverage of on tomorrow's broadcast. All right. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll read more of your comments. We'll tell you more about some other breaking stories and then get into what is happening in Iran. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.
Nearly 500 kilos of cocaine has been seized in a bust.
Thousands lined the pier at Seneca Harbor. Race weekend brought thousands to Watkins Glen International.
Hundreds and Horseheads joined other cities around the country on Saturday for the No Kings protest.
Accident. If you're looking for an honest, dependable, trustworthy auto repair shop, bring it to Nappy's. Or if it's undrivable, have it towed right to us. It's your choice where to take your vehicle. Nappy's works with all insurance companies and will manage all vehicle calibrations. Nappy's has a state-of-the-art paint booth and a new and improved repair shop. Let our friendly staff of specialists help you through the process and get it done right the first time. Commit to Nappy's, family-owned for 3 generations.
Thank you for your business.
Tired of cold weather? Sunny days are closer than you think. Get ready now for fun later with a boat, camper, or RV loan from Servview Credit Union at just 5.99% APR for up to 10 years. Adventure is waiting. Apply today.
For the longest time, it was hard for me to even get out of the house, much less do a backside 180. That's when I made the call. With my doctor's help, I was diagnosed with anxiety. Now I'm finding better ways to cope. Sure, some days are better than others, but the whole thing about getting out of the house, that's not really an issue anymore. Mental health care works when you make the call.
Morning, I'm meteorologist Brandon Weathers. Today's wintry mix is expected to stay under a ½ inch of any sleet and snow, and then the rest of the forecast is warm enough where our precipitation chances are rain rather than any kind of wintry precipitation. Highs today in the upper 30s for the most part, then we'll stay relatively close to that with lows near the freezing point overnight into Wednesday. After that, a dry break, 53, staying mild from there with additional
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Let's go to some viewer comments. The time change is simple. Set it 1/2 hour and leave it. I don't know why it's taking so long. I think anybody who does it, whether the president or if Congress gets involved, I think it would be hugely successful, but for some reason there's a couple of people that always have an excuse as to why not to address it. Comment from a different viewer. Speaking of the War Department, for some reason last night it occurred to me that perhaps a better name would be the Department of Armed Forces. You want PHAGs to have to print new business cards? That would be the third time. All right, this is big. The U.S. Supreme Court blocked the Democrats from redrawing New York City's lone GOP-held House seat following an emergency appeal from Representative Nicole Malliotakis. There is no other way to explain this redistricting than an activist judge pushing gerrymandering, because that seat had been approved the way it was drawn up for years, and they couldn't make an excuse as to why it needed to be redrawn. The order grants a stay, barring a state judge from redrawing the 11th congressional district map ahead of the midterm elections. Malatakis had appealed to the High Court earlier this month after a Manhattan judge ruled her district's current map, which links Staten Island and southern Brooklyn, was, quote, unconstitutional and ordered to redraw it back in January. New York GOP Chairman Ed Cox wrote in a statement, "This evening, the Supreme Court of the United States issued a stay in the New York 11 case. This blatantly political case violated both the New York state and federal constitutions, and as Justice Alito stated, the lower court's decision was a full-blown racial gerrymander." A separate appeal from Republicans to halt the Dems' attempts at redrawing the district lines was unanimously rejected by a mid-level state appellate court. Malatakis wrote in a statement, "Today's decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to keep New York's 11th congressional district intact helps restore the public's confidence in our judicial system and proves the challenge to our district lines was always meritless. The plaintiffs in this case attempted to manipulate our state's courts to use race as a weapon to rig our elections. That was wrong and, as demonstrated by today's ruling, clearly unconstitutional. Unfortunately, the politicalization of New York's courts and its judges necessitated action from the nation's highest court." Now, the plaintiffs originally argued in court that the existing maps, which no Democrats in the state legislature opposed when they were adopted back in 2024, had diluted minority black and Latino voters in the 11th district. Democrats, with the support of Governor Hochul, had launched the effort to redraw Malatakis' district in reaction to Texas allegedly gerrymandering its map to favor Republicans last year. Justice Samuel Alito wrote that the High Court recognizes it would have likely intervened in New York if they redrew the lines. Quote, "Our stay, far from causing disruption or upsetting legitimate expectations, eliminates much of the uncertainty and confusion that would exist if the Independent Redistricting Commission proceeded to draw a new district that this court would likely strike down if the cases reached us in time." Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in a dissenting opinion, along with fellow liberal justices Alina Kagan and Ketanji, I always have trouble with their first name, Ketanji Brown Jackson, called the stay an unprecedented step of the court's intervention on redistricting matters. Quote, "Time and again, this court has said the federal court should not interfere with state court litigation." So this is interesting. Again, always in lockstep, where you have the liberal justices voting exactly how you would predict they would vote, and what was nothing but outright judicial activism and gerrymandering. So that should come as no surprise, but that's one thing that is always amazing. When you have Republican or conservative justices so often go against what you think the conservative position would be, yet when it comes to the liberal justices, always 100% in line with each other. But that's great news for Nicole Malatakis, of course, but also great news for New York State, that the Democrats' scheme to redraw New York City's lone GOP-held House seat was blocked by the Supreme Court. We may talk about that, or at least I will announce it again, because I know we've discussed it. Last time Joe Semplinsky was on, we talked about it for quite some time. We've talked about it a lot on this program. I'm glad I could give you that update. Another update. This is kind of shocking. All right, so last night it was announced that President Trump stunned Washington insiders by announcing that he will attend this year's White House Correspondents' Dinner on April the 25th. Now, he has snubbed the journalists and skipped all prior dinners during his presidency. Trump wrote on Truth Social, "The White House Correspondents Association has asked me very nicely to be the honoree at this year's dinner, a long and storied tradition since it began in 1924 under then President Calvin Coolidge. In honor of our nation's 250th birthday and the fact that these correspondents now admit that I am truly one of the greatest presidents in the history of our country, the GOAT, according to many, meaning greatest of all time, it will be my honor to accept their invitation and work to make it the greatest, hottest, and most spectacular dinner of any kind ever." Oh, do you know how many correspondents, how many journalists lost it over that? And let me just read it one more time. "In honor of our nation's 250th birthday and the fact that these correspondents now admit that I am truly one of the greatest presidents in the history of our country, the GOAT, According to many, it will be an honor to accept their invitation and work to make it the greatest, hottest, and most spectacular dinner of any kind ever. Adding, because the press was extraordinarily bad to me, fake news all, right from the beginning of my first term, I boycotted the event and never went as honoree. However, I look forward to being with everyone this year. Hopefully, it will be something very special. I think most people, not even White House insiders, I think most people, if you had to bet on it, I think you would have voted or bet on the fact that he would not attend. Why now? It is kind of interesting. Correspondent Association President Weiji Zhang said, "We're happy the president has accepted our invitation and look forward to hosting him." For more than 100 years, the journalists of the White House Correspondents Association have enjoyed an evening with the president, a dinner that celebrates the First Amendment while supporting the work we do, including awards honoring excellent journalism and scholarships to help the next generation of reporters who someday will be the ones asking the questions at the White House. And it goes through some of the times that they mocked and ridiculed Trump. Some even overhyped it. The one year that Trump went, not when he was president, that Seth Meyers made some joke about, I think the joke's right here. Seth Meyers saying, "Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac?" Donald Trump often talks about running as a Republican, which is surprising. I just assumed he was running as a joke. So that was the joke that Seth Meyers made. Some tried to suggest that that's what led Trump to ultimately make the decision. I think that is overhyped, but that was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Anyway, this year's entertainer will be mentalist Oz Perlman, who specializes in mind reading and mind control performances. That's a little weird. Okay, so there's your breaking stories outside of Iran. We're going to get into Iran. Keep those waves, keep those comments coming in. You guys are busy this morning. You have a lot to say, and I appreciate that. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
Good job, buddy! Hey, buddy. It's time. Gotta go. Listen, I could be there in 15 minutes. Yep, see you soon. All right, you know the drill. Your brother could always do it. That's what I thought.
I just wanted to stop.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Brandon Weathers. Today's wintry mix is expected to stay under a ½ inch of any sleet and snow, and then the rest of the forecast is warm enough where our precipitation chances are rain rather than any kind of wintry precipitation. Highs today in the upper 30s for the most part, then we'll stay relatively close to that with lows near the freezing point overnight into Wednesday. After that, a dry break, 53, staying mild from there with additional opportunities to
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street in Corning. A couple of quick comments from viewers. This viewer writes, what is gerrymandering? It's actually pronounced gerrymandering after a governor, acceptable to say gerrymandering. I'm confused to your question. So the two ways to say it, after I looked it up to understand, is gerrymandering. The other way is gerrymandering. So maybe I'm just pronouncing a little bit too much like an U, but gerrymandering. I don't think I'm saying it wrong. And yes, it was all named after Governor Elbridge Gerry. There you go. All right, enough on that. Comment from a different viewer. Oh, and that's in reference to, by the way, that the Supreme Court found in favor of Nicole Malliotakis. And that's, you know what's interesting about that? Petitions have already, now, there's still time, of course, but petitions already started. So that means they're just about a week behind on getting their petition signed. Kind of interesting. All right, comment from Ken. He writes, it's no surprise that the liberal justices all vote in lockstep on anything that will benefit the Democrats. They all knew when nominated that in exchange for a lucrative lifetime appointment, they must vote for anything that benefits the Democrats, which doesn't necessarily benefit the American people. Thank you, Ken. You pronounce it gerrymandering. Okay, so you want me to pronounce it more gerrymandering? Because if you look at the pronunciation online, you can pronounce it G-H-E-R-R mandering, not Y mandering. I don't think I'm that far off. It may be a little bit of an, I don't know, accent. I don't think that's the right word, but anyway. By the way, before we talk about Iran, the Department of Education hangs a Charlie Kirk banner outside the D.C. building. It's among several banners now hanging outside the Department of Education's building in Washington, D.C. In addition to the banner of Kirk, others installed on March 1st included historic figures like Benjamin Franklin, Martin Luther King Jr., and Catherine Beecher. Alongside the notable faces were also banners referencing America's 250th anniversary, including one that reads, empowering our states to tell the stories of our heroes in American education. We know that banners have become a major talking point for those in the media. So kind of interesting. You can see the picture online. It's one of those large banners like they were recently released with President Trump's face on it as well. The banner of several prominent figures, including Kirk, are hanging outside the Department of Education's building on Maryland Avenue in Washington. In addition to banners of Kirk, Franklin, King, Beecher, there are also banners displayed of Booker T. Washington and Anne Sullivan. Except for Kirk, all of the figures had prominent careers as teachers or academics. Anyway, okay, so yesterday, Melania Okay, so when I pronounced gerrymandering, you didn't know what I was talking about in reference to the story? I'm not the first one to ever pronounce it like that. Melania Trump made history presiding over UN Security Council, remarking on Iran war deaths in a historic first. Melania Trump gavelled the UN Security Council meeting into order yesterday, but her message for the world's children was overshadowed by the president's attack on Iran. She said, "My heartfelt condolences to the families who have lost their heroes, who sacrificed their lives for freedom. Their bravery and dedication will always be remembered. I extend my earnest wishes for a swift and smooth recovery to all those who have been injured. You are in my thoughts and prayers during these challenging times. The U.S. stands with all of the children throughout the world." That is Melania Trump. It was a historic moment as she became the first presidential spouse to open the United States presidency of the UN Security Council, whose leadership rotates on a monthly basis. The focus of the first meeting was of the First Lady's priorities, children, technology, and education, which are all part of her Be Best initiative. Trump called the meeting in order and allowed the representatives of each country to address the topic. She spoke when it was the United States' turn. She said the path to peace depends on us taking responsibility to empower our children through education and technology. She also acknowledged the challenging times the world faces right now. The U.S. stands with all the children throughout the world. I hope soon peace will be yours. Conflict arises from ignorance, but knowledge creates understanding, replacing fear with peace and unity. I implore you to build a future generation of leaders who embrace peace through education. Trump, who was accompanied by Mike Waltz, was warmly received by the council members. She called on each of them to speak as part of her duty for chairing the meeting, referring to her as Madam President. They all thanked her for her personal interest in helping the children of the world. Trump closed out the 2-hour meeting with her thanks to the representatives, saying, "Thank you. It was an honor to be here with you on this historic day." So the first spouse of a president to open the United States presidency of the UN Security Council. So we had learned, and add to what Melania said, 6 U.S. service members have been killed in an Iranian strike that hit makeshift operations centers in Kuwait. That's according to a source familiar with the situation. The death toll from the attack at the port, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, has since risen to 6, U.S. Central Command announced yesterday, after the remains of 2 additional service members were recovered. Earlier Monday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the strike that killed the service members hit a tactical operations center that was fortified, but there was one projectile that made it through air defenses. It is suspected to be a drone strike, according to CNN. The source familiar said it was a direct hit just after 9 a.m. local time on the center of the building they described as a triple-wide trailer with office space inside. The attack came quickly and with no warnings or sirens to alert troops to evacuate or get into a bunker. Hours after the strike, fire was still smoldering in some parts of the building. The inside of the makeshift operations center blackened and the walls blown outwards from the blast, some parts peeling away from the building. Iran's Gulf of Oman fleet has been wiped out with 0 ships remaining, according to U.S. Central Command. The Iran's naval presence in the Gulf of Oman has been reduced to 0, announcing that every Iranian warship operating the strategic waterway at the outset of Operation Epic Fury has been destroyed, as American forces struck more than 1,250 targets in the first 48 hours of the campaign. Posting on X, they said 2 days ago the Iranian regime had 11 ships in the Gulf of Oman. Today they have 0. The Iranian regime has harassed and attacked international shipping in the Gulf of Oman for decades. Those days are over. Freedom of maritime navigation has underpinned American and global economic prosperity for more than 80 years. U.S. forces will continue to defend it. Now, there was fears, or the media's rolling with this, but did you see the threats made by one of Putin's cronies? Yesterday, a top ally of Vladimir Putin launched an attack against Donald Trump after issuing yet another chilling World War III warning. It's Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's former president, cautioned that the world is nearing a major confrontation, claiming that U.S. actions could trigger World War III and that a global catastrophe may be imminent. Now, we had reported to you on yesterday, that there's a lot of threats going around like that now Putin's hands are untied because Trump attacked Iran. But this is what Dmitry Medvedev said. Has the Third World War already begun? Or is the world still not entering it? Are we balancing? Formally, no. But if Trump continues his insane course of criminal regime change, it will undoubtedly begin. And any event could trigger it. Any event. This is a war by the U.S. and its allies to maintain global dominance. The pigs don't want to give up their trout. Trump made a grave mistake with his decision. He put all Americans under potential attack, even though the Iranian regime is not well liked in neighboring Arab countries. The main thing is that the late Ayatollah was a spiritual father of nearly 300 million, and now he's also a martyr. You can fill in the rest yourself. And now there's no doubt that Iran will redouble its efforts to develop a nuclear weapon, as if they weren't anyway. Then, where was some comment to the extent that, there we go, here it is. On Saturday, he had said, the peacekeeper is at it again. The talks with Iran were just a cover. Everyone knew that. So who has more patience to wait for the enemy's sorry end now? This is the ominous. The U.S. is just 249 years old. The Persian Empire was founded over 2,500 years ago. Let's see what happens in 100 years or so. Yes, that's a good, we were talking about gerrymandering. And one viewer said, good morning, Frank, good morning. It's pronounced win. We don't get to say that much in New York. I agree. Thank you very much. Major decision by the Supreme Court. If you are just joining us, that was major news. And there's so much going on in the kind of Trump news cycle, if you will, that it got buried down in kind of the deeper parts of the news. But in a Republican win, the Supreme Court retains that district in New York. In an emergency ruling, the justices preserved the district of a Republican congresswoman, despite a lower court ruling that it illegally diluted the power of minority voters. Now, we know this was 100% an activist judge. We have been talking about this for quite some time now. Now, the court's decision is temporary, allowing the old map to remain in place as legal appeals continue. It means the map will most likely be used for the midterms. And like Samuel Alito said, well, yeah, I would hope it'd be used in the midterms. Petitions are going on now. But like Alito said, if we give the time to redraw it, we're just going to throw that out too. So, yes, but major news, good news. Yes, as that viewer says, win. Yes, yep, that's exactly what it is. It's a major win for New York, and congratulations to Nicole Malotakis, who now has to campaign, now has to get those signatures, but still a major decision by the Supreme Court. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.
Allegiance flight from Elmira to Myrtle Beach starts May 22nd, 2026. Whether it's a weekend escape or a week in the sun, Myrtle Beach is closer than ever. Non-stop to sun, sand, and seaside days. From takeoff to toes in the sand, your coastal getaway starts right here at Elmira Corning Regional. Mornings on the boardwalk, afternoons on the golf course, and evenings with oceanfront dining or a flight away with Allegiant's new direct flight. Starts May 22nd, 2026. Book now at AllegiantAir.com.
My fiance is a veteran. He was a combat medic in the Army.
I did tours in Korea, Germany, and Bosnia before I got injured.
There's been a lot of wear and tear on his body.
My knees are bone on bone from doing all those jumps and lugging my backpack and all that gear around. I was also exposed to toxins.
When Yusuf got out of the military, he needed help getting his disability benefits.
Luckily, DAV came to the rescue. They fought for me the same way that I fought for my country.
Every year, DAV provides life-changing support to more than 1 million veterans like Yusuf, helping them get the benefits they've earned so they can achieve victories, great and small.
Now Yusuf is paying it forward. DAV has been instrumental in helping him start 2 healthcare technology companies that are working to help veterans everywhere.
My victory is never giving up and finding more ways to serve.
He's pretty amazing.
Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
Morning, I'm meteorologist Brandon Weathers. Today's wintry mix is expected to stay under a ½ inch of any sleet and snow, and then the rest of the forecast is warm enough where our precipitation chances are rain rather than any kind of wintry precipitation. Highs today in the upper 30s for the most part, then we'll stay relatively close to that with lows near the freezing point overnight into Wednesday. After that, a dry break, 53, staying mild from there with additional opportunities
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. Yes, thank you to the viewers sending in. I saw that as well. So about, I guess I see the 2 different, originally gerrymandering. I'm spending way too much time on this, I understand. The other way is gerrymandering. See? So I think we're both right. All right, let's go to some other viewer comments. Enough on that. We'll just start saying redistricting. Mark says, so we won the game of Battleship and we won over the Dems in the redistricting quest. That's awesome. Yeah, it was a major win. There's a lot of fear that the Supreme Court wouldn't step in at one point because really you're talking, and I know this seems like a small thing, but it really isn't. that right now petition process is going on. Now, I don't know off the top of my head how many signatures Nicole Maltakis needs, but petitions aren't necessarily a quick, easy thing because you want, let's for argument's sake. Well, I give you an example. Here in Steuben County, get this. The man running for coroner, yes, coroner is an elected position in case you didn't know. The person running for coroner has to, in Steuben County, get 1,000 signatures. And that's not an easy feat. So now imagine what the Congresswoman needs to get. And I know she lost a week on it. She'll still be able to get it. But if she needs 1,000, which she needs, I'm sure more than that, she's going to want to get 2,000. So it can't be challenged. That's why when the Supreme Court didn't step in a week or so ago, I was getting concerned. But it was a big win. The Supreme Court decided in Nicole Maltakis' favor. Now, again, that doesn't mean this is permanent. But it looks as if at least this upcoming November election, she should be fine with the maps as drawn. All right. Comment from Steve. He says, good mornings. And I say good morning to you, Steve. Hold on. The Russian threat, in my opinion, is just to get the people in our nation to sit there and flame the panics of World War III. If Russia can't take out Ukraine, how are they going to battle us? Good point, Steve. Thank you very much. I think, listen, the media, politicians, international enemies, and, well, we'll say not friends, of course, they are trying to exploit this. I know CNN has a poll that shows what the American people don't want it. We had the articles yesterday where it's, Trump's MAGA support will dwindle because of this. I don't see it, but this is kind of typical coverage from the mainstream media. But a couple other breaking stories before we then get into some of the quotes and what some people are saying. U.S. aircraft leave Spain after Spain's government says bases cannot be used for Iran attack. Foreign Minister Jose Manuel Alvarez said Spain would not allow its military bases, which are jointly operated by the U.S. and Spain, but under Spanish sovereignty, to be used for attacks on Iran, which Spain has condemned. At least 7 of the aircrafts were shown on Flight Radar 24 as having landed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Britain has also initially refused to allow the use of its bases for an attack on Iran, but on Sunday, Prime Minister Keir Starmer authorized their use for collective self-defense. Now, Trump said he was very disappointed in Starmer blocking the U.S. from launching Iran strikes from British bases. This coming out yesterday. President Trump said it's very disappointing that Britain didn't stand with the U.S. when it launched strikes against Iran's military and weapons industry. And British Prime Minister Starmer then took too long to get involved in the defense of the Middle East allies once the bombs started flying. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Also, the State Department tells Americans to leave over a dozen Middle East countries. That list of countries include Bahrain, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Israel, the West Bank and Gaza, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. The order came after Iran escalated missile attacks in the Middle East when the U.S. and Israel killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah al-Khamenei in an attack over the weekend. As the New York Times reported, Iran directed its fire onto various U.S. bases throughout the Gulf region. Iran has struck at least 6 U.S. military facilities around the Middle East since the United States and Israel began attacking the country. It's unclear how many munitions Iran launched at the location or how many attacks may have been thwarted. Now, if you guys, what's that mean? If you guys have a different source to look those things over, I would love to hear about it. Sorry, I didn't say anything researching the pronunciation of gerrymandering. No, I'm not criticizing anybody. I just never heard it pronounced that way. Only 2 listed here. Yeah, so like gerrymandering. I've never heard it said gerrymandering. But I see there soft G gerrymandering. Maybe my Jerry is just sounding more like jury, so that's maybe on me. But if you look at the pronunciation on Wikipedia, it looks like gerrymandering, G-H-E-R-R mandering. Anyway, I think everybody gets the point of what I was trying to say. Comment from a different viewer before we go to break. Isn't there any ongoing poll that Americans don't want CNN? Yes, I think that's called viewership. I think that's called ratings. You raise a very good point. We've got a couple of other, I don't know, I hate the term takes on this, but some people weighing in on what is happening in Iran. We do have probably more in the next hour. A couple updates on the energy policy here in New York State. Also, we'll talk a little bit more, even though we've already covered it, but I've got to kind of cover it in the 7 o'clock hour with that decision by the Supreme Court. So there we are. Let's take our break. Whew. Yeah, the governor that came up with it, his people used the hard G. Okay, fair enough. All right, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
This isn't your father's library. Create with the 3D printer. Release your inner audio engineer or sewing machine riddles, all with your library card. Go to getyourlibrarycard.com today.
Give kids time. Just 5 minutes a day. Ask them how they're feeling. And listen.
Can you help me?
Mom, Dad, we're going out.
Thank you.
Oh, look, they're playing chess.
What you got there?
Will you help my mom?
She's real sick, huh? Hey, crew, I'll give the first move to anyone who signs up to be an organ donor. How do you do it?
Easy. Just go to organdonor.gov.
You heard him, organdonor.gov.
More donors means more hope. Sign up at organdonor.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. A couple of viewer comments. It's simple. The jury gave Jerry the boot. I like that. Perfect. Gerrymandering. I know my E sounds a little too much like a U, but I still don't think I'm wrong. Ken writes in, Frank, this is way off topic, but because you have a huge megaphone in the area, I thought I would ask your viewers a question through you, if that's okay. I'm reading the sight unseen, so I guess it is. We live on the side of a small hill in a development in Horseheads, as a nice above-the-house view looking west. We recently noticed that a new tower was installed on top of a hill looking northwest. This new tower has a super bright white flashing light instead of a red flashing light, like every other tower. It is very annoying at night, especially when viewing the night sky. I am wondering if any of your listeners have noticed it and if someone knows why a white light instead of a red light. Thanks for sending, Ken. I can ask that again in the next hour, too, in case we don't have any responses. This comment from a different viewer. This is from a poll, a daily email poll. You would think it would stand to reason if this many people support the strikes that they would also support Trump. So when you go look at the mainstream media polls, you really have to take them with a grain of salt. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. You have to take it with. So this, according to Poll King, Do you support the U.S. military strikes on Iran? Yes, 78.6%. No, 71.4%. Yes, of course. And that's why we mention it, the mainstream media, on this, because it is to show their bias. Because we know that what we're reading is not factual and is more opinion-based. And we have a prime example of that. I don't know if you saw it. Now, this is out of CBS Austin. And I see other comments come in. We'll get to those in just a second. But out of CBN Austin, a reporter was seen on a live Facebook stream appearing to get directive from a superior to steer away from a, get this, pro-Israel, pro-U.S., and pro-Trump protest behind him. Now, protest is a weird word to use in that scenario, but it is. It was a pro-Israel, pro-U.S., and pro-Trump, I'd say, rally. So his superior calls him, and this is all caught live on Facebook Live, and he refused to go along with the instruction. And he did it right on camera. Vinny Maratrano was outside the Texas Capitol covering dueling demonstrations in the wake of U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran, when a crew member handed him a phone with a message from an unnamed boss. After reading the screen, the reporter asked out loud, "What does that mean?" The other staffer said, "It means they don't want us to focus on this." "Well, I am," Maratrano shot back. Now, the station released a statement saying station management directed the crew to follow our standard protest and rally safety and coverage guidelines, remaining on the perimeter, gather necessary contact, complete the live shot, move to a safe location. There was no directive to avoid or de-emphasize any particular perspective. The guidance was focused on safety, logistics, and ensuring comprehensive coverage in a rapidly evolving situation. The safety of our teams is top priority. Now, the moment was clipped down to roughly 35 seconds and quickly went viral as it got reshared by conservative social media accounts. The exchange has been seen as evidence the media was trying to bury a show of support for President Trump and the military action. In the footage described on the live stream, Maratrano is surrounded by demonstrators waving Iranian flags and chanting, "Thank you, Trump," and "Thank you, Bibi," a reference, of course, to Benjamin Netanyahu. They don't want you to focus on this. They've tried to save face with the press release, but it's still, I think, worth mentioning. All right, we got to take another break. We've got a lot more to talk about. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in, and we will be right back, getting ready to wrap up hour number one.
Hi, this is Tom Witzel, owner of Hesselson's in Amara Heights. At Hesselson's, we care about your well-being and overall health, whether it's relieving stress, muscle recovery, increasing circulation, or just revitalizing the body. Hesselson's now has 2 complete line of infrared and traditional rock saunas in our new and expanded showroom. Come in today and see why owning a sauna is the start of your new healthy lifestyle. Hesselson's is still locally and family-owned and operated in Amara Heights. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Allegiant's flight from Elmira to Myrtle Beach starts May 22nd, 2026. Whether it's a weekend escape or a week in the sun, Myrtle Beach is closer than ever. Non-stop to sun, sand, and seaside days. From takeoff to toes in the sand, your coastal getaway starts right here at Elmira Corning Regional. Mornings on the boardwalk, afternoons on the golf course, and evenings with oceanfront dining or a flight away with Allegiant's new direct flight. Starts May 22nd, 2026. Book now at AllegiantAir.com.
First Tee, we teach kids how to play golf, but that's not our end game. Golf is simply our means to teach life lessons that build inner strength, self-confidence, and resilience.
It's more than a game. It helps them be more independent, more secure. It has given them more confidence, and I think that helps them with everything else.
Come join us at First.
So, frankly speaking, Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Okay, some comments from viewers. All I have read about China and Russia supporting Iran has indicated that though they are friendly with Iran, they have not offered to help. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. He also cherry pick and gerrymander different areas for the opinions they want. Yes, they do. Absolutely. That's in reference to the polls. I totally agree. There's so many things. If you really read up on polling, number one, it's antiquated, really, the way it's done now, with people not having the landlines, and you can't really trust necessarily online. But there's so many different things that just make them so easy to manipulate. Hence the reason why Trump's never really done good on polls in the media. And then you have a landslide victory 2 Novembers ago. Okay. Comment from a different viewer. If you think it's unaffordable to live here now, how do you feel about the governor planning on raising gas tax another $2.23 a gallon to help pay for the green agenda that they have? It was in the leaked memo. Yes, and we have that to bring up a little bit later on, and I appreciate you spurring us on to bring it up. But New York gas prices could soar by $2.23. Hochul warns as she tries to delay the controversial green energy mandates. So again, this is a prime example of what we dealt with in New York. They want a virtue signal so bad, so they go out there and say, look what we're doing. We're saving the planet. We're saving the world. And we'll worry about all the repercussions 4, 5, 6 years later. And now guess what? Those repercussions are coming home to roost. And this is an election year for Hochul. So maybe something will change with the green energy plans, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, Ken, this is for you. A tower flashes a white strobe light instead of a red light, primarily for high visibility aviation safety during the day, eliminating the need to paint the structure in alternate orange and white stripes. White strobes are used often, switching to lower intensity at night to comply with FAA Federal Aviation Administration standards for structures usually taller than 200 feet. All right, there you go. And a comment from a different viewer. Regarding the rally, Republicans don't act like the out-of-control Democrats at protests. Republicans are adults, unlike the children that comprise the Democrat Party. Look at... I know we talked about this on the program before, but remember the days of the Tea Party? That was like going to a family reunion. You expected people to pass the macaroni salad and bring iced tea. So I would agree with you. But speaking of radical, did you see in Virginia, a Virginia-based mosque is accused of paying a sickening tribute to Ayatollah al-Khamenei, hailing him as, quote, our leader and mourning his martyrdom. The Manassas Mosque in Prince William County put up the now deleted Instagram post on Saturday after Khamenei was killed in an Israeli airstrike. The troubling post featured a photo of Khamenei with an invitation to attend a mourning ceremony on Sunday at the mosque. The Manassas Mosque has recently come under fire after reporters attended a sermon on the day before Khamenei was killed, which featured a framed photo of the Islamist embracing October 7th mastermind Yassin Sinwar and Hezbollah leader Nasrallah, both terrorists who were killed by Israeli strikes. A man at the mosque called for Allah to, quote, destroy all the non-believers. So there you are. All right. Also... we don't have time. Got a couple other examples of this kind of radicalism. But we got to take a short break and wrap up hour number 1. Stay with us. Keep all these great comments and discussion going. We're having a blast this morning. I really do appreciate it. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
An albino baby buffalo was born.
Nearly 500 kilos of cocaine has been seized in a bus.
Day 1 of the National Glider Competition.
Want to save $1,000? Switch to Spectrum and we guarantee you will. Seriously, you can hold us to it. Switch to Spectrum fiber-powered internet and 2 mobile lines for just $30 a month each. That's $1,000 in real savings in your first year, guaranteed. Or we'll cover the difference. We call it the Spectrum Savings Guarantee. So call this number now, switch, and save $1,000 on internet and mobile. It's a guaranteed no-brainer.
Welcome to our number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Obviously, we're talking about Iran. We are going to talk about New York here in just a moment. I didn't want to go through some more kind of these radical takes on Iran if we could. And then we are going to talk about, and this is a big story. We've been talking about it all morning, well, for different reasons. But the Supreme Court stopped that redistricting in Nicole Malotakis' district in Congress here in New York. We talked about this with Joe Sempolinski last time he was on the program and kind of been giving you updates. No one was sure if the Supreme Court would step in. They did, and they found in Malotakis' favor, which is huge. So now it looks as if now keep in mind, that's the only GOP-led New York City district. So there was a lot of judicial activism there. It's nice the Supreme Court checked in. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. All right. Former South Park writer Toby Morton has launched a website calling for President Trump's son, Barron, to be forced into the U.S. military and sent to a war zone. Morton, 50 years old, who runs a large number of fake news parody websites and who claims he is a creator of anti-fascist websites, recently launched draftbarontrump.com as the president continues his military actions in Iran. Morton's attack on the 19-year-old Barron Trump begins telling visitors America is strong because its leaders are strong. President Trump proves that every day. Naturally, his son Barron is more than ready to defend the country his father so boldly commands. Service is honor, strength is inherited, and then dog bless Barron. That's not a mistake on my point. That's what it says. Continues, this site is dedicated to honoring the strongest and bravest voices in war. When power is projected abroad, it's only right that strength exists at home. If you're looking for proven genes, inherited courage, and unquestionable resolve, look no further than the Trump family. Leadership starts somewhere. Anyway. Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, said the American public is bewildered as to why we are striking Iran. Bewildered. Let me tell you, if the American people are bewildered as to what this is all about, they're in good company. It started off by saying we're going to stop Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Well, I agreed with that years ago and still think that's proper. And then came the second explanation. No, it isn't about that. It's about ballistic missiles. They're developing ballistic missiles that threaten the U.S. Then came the whole argument about whether or not we were going to do something to stop them from developing terrorism around the world, an imminent threat to the United States. Today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio put in a fourth idea. And the fourth idea was we did it because Israel was going to attack anyway, and we were going to be vulnerable after that attack. So we have all these rationales, and this president and his administration failing to come to Congress, as required by the Constitution, to clearly explain to the American people the reasons for this war. It's a dangerous thing for a president to start a war. It's easier to get into war than it is to get out. The president needs and the military deserves public support for the risks that they are taking, the dangers that they're facing because of the president's orders. And if the American public is bewildered as to why we're doing this, it's not a good start. Former CIA Director John Brennan said that Donald Trump's military strikes in Iran were a drastically bad mistake. This is such a tragic, senseless, and needless loss of life that we're seeing right now. There was no imminent threat. Clearly, I think the administration is now making things up in order to try to justify what is happening. What's clear to me is Benjamin Netanyahu, who has long wanted to have this type of military operation against Iran, he was able to bring Trump along and got him to engage in something like this. Democrat Mark Warner said, Trump never is careful with his words or his threats or his boasts. This was in reference of there will be American boots on the ground. He said, I pray not. This president got elected on the basis of no more endless wars in the Middle East. But I sometimes think, we know the president says rash things. I don't think he thinks them through. But when the president of the United States calls on the Iranian people to go to the streets and take back their government, after 100,000 protesters and tens of thousands of them are killed by the Iranians because they respond to the American president's call to action, do we owe a moral obligation? I don't know. I do know this, that you have to be careful with your words if you're a president of the United States, and this president is never careful with his words or his threats. Why am I going through all these? Democrat Senator Jeff Merkel said that Trump is a child, worrying about Iran trying to kill him over climate change. All right, let's listen to this take for a second. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Cuba because that is Rubio's key goal is to cut off. He's cut off the oil to Cuba. And then I don't expect troops on the ground, but the idea that we might start negotiating with Cuba and then in the middle of it start taking out their leaders if we have the intelligence to do so. It's been demonstrated now twice. So absolutely this is gunboat strategy that harkens back to a previous era. And there is in this no American leadership about the world we need to build together on the planet Earth. There is simply, well, I will be a king, and I don't like people. I'll take them out. I will assassinate them. This is not a pattern for building a better democracy or better world. There's not an objective here that says we have big issues that we need to advance democracy. There's not that. We need to tackle a planet that's getting too hot from climate change. So we'll work. No, we're not. You'll describe that as leadership of a child throwing a tantrum. That's pretty much it. Ruben Gallego, Democrat from Arizona, claimed idiots in the Trump administration started a dumb war with Iran. Very adult-like in what he said. These idiots that are just willing to sacrifice U.S. men, U.S. women, without any real thought about what was going to do and what consequences are going to bring to these families. That's a lot of ways that we could defend Israel's, existence and sovereignty. I'm 100% for that, but we don't need to go to war for them, especially when it is a dumb war. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, former vice presidential candidate, joined the chorus of Democrats criticizing the Trump administration's strikes on Iran. Walz has been one of the most visible state leaders and Trump critics of the past year as Minnesota became embroiled in a Somali-linked child care fraud problem that metastasized to other sectors, while reportedly condemning the Department of Homeland Security's immigration enforcement efforts in his state. As missiles rained down on Iranian targets and took out 86-year-old theocratic dictator Al Khamenei, Walz posted no new wars. As Michael Rappaport said, Iran started this war 47 years ago when they took Americans hostage, honestly. Can people crack open a book before posting nonsense? Representative Randy Fine asked, will this affect your Somali kickbacks? In reference to what he said. Cam Higbee said, didn't you just try to start a war with Trump a month ago? Anyway. Okay, so did you see the video that's went viral? Purportedly a video appears to show Kuwaitis thanking a downed U.S. pilot for battling Iran. The pilot is seen grinning and standing easily on 2 feet after apparently ejecting from her F-15 jet following the case of friendly fire. You're fine, really? A man shouted while approaching the brave pilot. You need something to help you? The pilot confirmed she was okay before the man assured her she was safe. Thank you for helping us. The pilot then raised her hand as if to say, you're welcome. Now, the footage is unconfirmed, but it's a very touching video. Now, back to kind of the anti-Iran talks. According to Matthew Petty, the goalpost of the Iran war keeps shifting. Trump and his team can't get their story straight on why they started this war, how long they plan to fight it, and whether they'll put boots on the ground. I thought Trump made it pretty clear that he said he could. Despite all the chaos, the Trump administration is insisting that it's too smart and too bold to be bogged down in the same kinds of Middle Eastern debacles as its predecessors. Quote, this is not Iraq, this is not endless, Hegseth said. We fight to win and we don't waste time or lives. And now this is the point I was making earlier. A CNN poll says that 59% of Americans disapprove of the Iran strikes, and most think a long-term conflict is likely. But why wouldn't they think that? If you're a CNN viewer, that's all you've been told from the jump on this. That this is going to be Iraq all over again. That Trump doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, look at how bad they've tried to smear Secretary of War Pete Hegseth from the beginning. So they've tried to create this narrative, and then it should come as no surprise that 6 in 10 Americans disapprove of the U.S.'s decision. But going back to what that viewer was saying, and I was kind of echoing, you have to take this with more than just a grain of salt. This is CNN. They are going to manipulate this leading up to the midterms to make Trump look bad. There's no doubt about that. You have the midterms right around the corner. They want this to be a harmful position to the president and Republicans. But J.D. Vance rejected the idea that Iran will turn into a forever war, saying no way. Comparing what is happening in Iran to another forever war like Iraq or Afghanistan, Vance pointed out that in the case of Afghanistan, it was, quote, 20 years of not having a clear objective and 20 years of the United States trying to bring liberal democracy to the country. In the case of Iraq, Vance explained it was shorter, but the U.S. did not have a clear message or mission or definition. After Iraq and Afghanistan, some people say, oh, here we go again. Is that something here you're thinking about? Jesse Waters asked him. He said, the president has clearly defined what he wants to accomplish. There's just no way. I said this before the conflict started. I'll repeat it again. There's just no way that Donald Trump is going to allow this country to get into a multi-year conflict with no clear end in sight and no clear objective. What is different about President Trump, and it's frankly different about both Republicans and Democrats of the past, is that he's not going to let the country go to war unless there's a clearly defined objective. He's defined the objective as Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon and has to commit long-term to never trying to rebuild their nuclear capabilities. Pete Hegseth also saying Iran operation is not an endless or regime change war, saying that yesterday alongside Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Dan Kane. Hegseth acknowledged the 4 U.S. service members. That number has now increased to 6 that were killed in action since Operation Epic Fury. Hegseth say, we fight to win and we don't waste time or lives. As the president warned, an effort of this scope will include casualties. War is hell and always will be. A grateful nation honors the 4 Americans we have lost thus far and those injured, the absolute best of America. He called Operation Epic Fury the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial operation in history. We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it. Their war on America has been our retribution against their Ayatollah and his death cult. All right, there we go. A couple of other quick things on this. I do want to get to New York State issues because there is so much going on. But there are a couple of interesting points. So we'll see what we jump to next. I see some comments coming in. Keep them coming in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Wrongful death after a motor vehicle crash, the words say it all, but do not begin to capture the anguish, the suffering, and the loss. It's hard not to be emotional during a time like that. But that's exactly the time when you need someone to be clear-headed, eyes open, and know exactly what has to be done to protect survivors and to get some justice. That someone will be me, William Mattar, when you call 444-4444.
Yeah, hello. I'm really not sure if this is what you all do, but I really don't have anywhere else to turn.
Hi. I don't even know why I'm calling right now. I'm sorry. My thoughts are going a mile a minute.
My kids are out of state. My buddies from the army are all gone now. I'm really alone.
I left the service last year. My mom just passed away a few months ago. I miss so much time with her. I keep getting calls about the bills, and I'm trying to get a job, but I feel so stuck.
Okay, ma'am. I'm glad you called.
Okay, sir. Let's stay on the line and walk through some things.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Morning, I'm meteorologist Brandon Weathers. Today's wintry mix is expected to stay under a ½ inch of any sleet and snow, and then the rest of the forecast is warm enough where our precipitation chances are rain rather than any kind of wintry precipitation. Highs today in the upper 30s for the most part, then we'll stay relatively close to that with lows near the freezing point overnight into Wednesday. After that, a dry break, 53, staying mild from there with additional opportunities
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. A lot of comments coming in. I do appreciate those. We'll read them in the next segment because I didn't have a chance to read through all of them. Kind of put them in order, so I apologize. But we'll read those in the next segment. I'm running late anyway, so that segment will come up quickly. George Will, the Washington Post columnist, who's kind of a, for lack of a better word, rhino. He was never a fan of Trump. He actually praised Trump and his administration's strike on Iran. George Will penned a piece on Sunday titled, "At Last, the Credibility of U.S. Deterrence is Being Restored." The perhaps 30,000 protesters who perished in Iran's streets in early January did not die in vain. Now, George Will, a former Republican who voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, is in the most recent presidential elections, marveled at how precision munitions, directed by spectacular intelligence, enabled a decapitation strategy as the U.S. and Israel carried out Operation Epic Fury. The U.S. action for regime change in Iran is not sufficient to produce regional tranquility. It is, however, a necessity for beginning to reestablish a precondition for a more peaceable world, the credibility of U.S. deterrence. Wow. Winning over George Will. Benjamin Netanyahu saying, if we didn't hit Iran now, we couldn't in the future. They were building new missiles, nuke sites that would be immune from strikes. He also said that the U.S. and Israel strikes on Iran won't lead to an endless war. You're not going to have an endless war. This terror regime in Iran is at the weakest point it's been since it hijacked Iran from the brave Iranian people 47 years ago. So this is going to be a quick and decisive action. And we are going to create the conditions first for the Iranian people to get control of their destiny, to form their own democratically elected government, which will make a different Iran altogether. All right. And there's a really good point from the New York Post and something that maybe gets glanced over. And it's a memo to Democrats. The United States is at war and vulnerable to terrorist attacks. This is no time to be defunding Homeland Security. What a great point, because the media knows that this partial government shutdown, this DHS shutdown, has not been a positive for the Democrats, so that's why we haven't heard it reported on. Think of that. We are at a war with Iran, essentially, vulnerable, as like they said here, to terrorist attacks. And have you seen the coverage in the mainstream media of why the Democrats are still holding up DHS funding? I thought this was a really good point that they're making. Democrats have been withholding funding for the Department of Homeland Security for weeks in hopes of forcing Republicans to agree to all but gut ICE. Yet now the United States and Israel have struck Iran, and Americans face the threat that terrorist sympathizers could be in this country. Obviously, after Biden's open borders, there's major concern for that. Open porous borders where these people weren't vetted. Already, a seemingly Islamist madman shot up a bar in Austin, Texas, following the joint U.S. and Israeli air attack. Such an act could be a sign of things to come as lone wolves or Iranian sleeper cells awaken to carry out savage violence against Americans. Because again, remember, you had open borders. We don't know, and we said at the time, we don't know how many terrorists cross that border. So why are Democrats still holding up funding for DHS, the agency tasked with finding and neutralizing terrorists in the homeland? Fixated on ending ICE as part of their midterm electoral strategy, Senate Democrats have refused to end this partial shutdown, which only affects DHS agencies, including TSA, Border Patrol, and the Secret Service, though ironically not ICE, unless Republicans cave on their radical wish list. Never mind that the GOP has already agreed to some of the Democrats' demands. Body cameras for ICE agents, for example, have gotten the okay. And Republican leadership has expressed openness to limiting random stops of suspicious vehicles. But that's not enough. The Dems also demand, among several other things, a mask ban for ICE officers, which won't happen so long as left-wing officials and activists encourage followers to dox, harass, and even harm agents and their families. Meanwhile, TSA agents, DHS officers, and even the Secret Service are working without pay. These are committed civil servants dedicated to their mission and are surely doing their best to defend the homeland. But at a time like this, it's beyond nuts to treat these vital workers like that, especially just to make a political point. Democrats may feel gratified that the radical wing is sticking it to ICE, but their cheap stunt could wind up being very expensive for the rest of them. Now, according to Conrad Black, Trump's devised a new method for dealing with terror, and that's squashing the idea of a forever war. The fact that between 75% and 90% of Iranians detest the Islamic Republic will mean that any war conducted within Iran will be between Iranians and the Islamic Republic. And the Islamic Republic will have little ultimate chance of survival. Now, we don't want to get into all the wonkiness of all this because I already got to take a short break and I want to read your comments. But it boils down to this. The initial reaction of Democrats to the Trump administration's attack on Iran confirms that the party's suicidal policy. It prefers the rights of violent criminals who entered the country illegally to the rights of law-abiding Americans, has made a tragic shambles of transgender issues, has deliberately sponsored increased crime rates in American cities, and attempted to strangle American industry with their green terror, with the nonsense about the existential threat of carbon use to human life. And now they prefer Iran to be unvexed. Their only policy remains frenzied abuse of a president who, from Iran to Sudan, is seen as the indispensable defender of human liberty. Now, Steve Mosier believes that Trump, he hit Iran, but it's really China that's in his crosshairs. Your thoughts on that? We do have a couple other things on this. Because I want to get to New York State issues before we run out of time, and then we'll get to maybe some other issues as well. But I thought this was interesting by Brennan O'Neill. He said the hypocrisy of the West's weepers for the Islamic Republic, activists who didn't say a word about the theocratic slaughter of thousands of Iranians, are now up in arms about America's strikes. I almost feel sorry for the left, he writes, for today they're going to have to pretend to give a darn about Iranian life despite having ignored the slaughter of thousands of Iranians by the demented Islamic regime literally just last month. They're going to have to take us to social media and cry, oh no, Iranians might die. Despite having said nothing when Iranians did die in their thousands at the hands of the theocratic tyrants who rule over them. They're going to be forced by events to make a spectacle of their own hypocrisy, to expose to the world the cant and outright inhumanity that often fuels what passes for anti-imperialism these days. It's happened again. No sooner than the U.S. and Israel launched airstrikes against regime targets that the anti-war left was fuming all over the internet. They're raging against these rogue states that have declared war not only on Iran but on the whole world. It's an illegal war of aggression, they say. It's U.S. imperialist aggression. Early reports that they have been small numbers of civilian casualties have gotten them hollering about murder. So it's murder when Iranian innocents tragically die as a result of war, but not a big deal when Iranian innocents are intentionally butchered by Islamist monsters who loathe them for wanting freedom. He writes, this again, Brendan O'Neill, where were your emergency protests? Because I heard that actually, even locally, there were quote unquote emergency protests after this. Where were the emergency protests in solidarity with the millions of workers and students who have been waging a revolt against the Islamic Republic? I attended two of the big pro-Iranian gatherings in London, and those protesters were notably absent. Not one of these virtue signalers who have worn down their soles of their shoes by marching every week for Gaza could be bothered to say a single word for Iran. If the reported deaths of some regime goons makes you angrier than the proven deaths of thousands of everyday Iranians, then it's not Iran you sympathize with. It's the ruthless theocracy that's been squatting on that once great nation for nearly 50 years. How to explain a moral universe where there can be more anger over strikes against the government than there was over the government's mass murder of its own citizens? This, sadly, is what has become of anti-imperialism. That old noble cause was once about defending the independence of nation-states that found themselves in the crosshairs of the great powers. In recent years, however, it was curdled into a cynical, blind loathing for America. It's just anti-Westernism now. It is fueled less by a love of sovereign rights and by a kind of cultish anger, where the fashionable suspicion of all things Western gets falsely dolled up as anti-war activism. Anyway, we can't go through any more of this because I'm running real late. Stay with us. We're going to go to New York State issues. Yeah, probably when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Man, we are running really late. Okay, here we go.
You don't have time to go to the gym? The health club is not an option? Come to Hesselson today and see why swim spas and fitness systems can fit into anyone's yard and budget. 12-foot, 14-foot, 15-foot, 18-foot dual temperature hot tubs and swim spas are all on display in Hesselson's indoor and outdoor showroom. Try before you buy. 0% interest-free financing options are available on every Hesselson swim spa. Swim and exercise year-round and start making every day better. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Albino baby buffalo was born.
Nearly 500 kilos of cocaine has been seized and a bust.
Day one of the National Glider Competition.
I was diagnosed at 65.
37. Earlier than most.
Every 9 minutes, someone is diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
And every one of them can turn to the American Parkinson Disease Association.
Visit apdaparkinson.org to learn more and show your support today.
There have always been a few ready to fight and win. Since 1775, these few have been Marines, and they come from across this land to defend the future of our nation. This year, our Corps celebrates 250 years, and Marines are proud to serve this country, each other, and all that is still to come for America.
Morning, I'm meteorologist Brandon Weathers. Today's wintry mix is expected to stay under a ½ inch of any sleet and snow, and then the rest of the forecast is warm enough where our precipitation chances are rain rather than any kind of wintry precipitation. Highs today in the upper 30s for the most part, then we'll stay relatively close to that with lows near the freezing point overnight into Wednesday. After that, a dry break, 53, staying mild from there with additional
Well, frankly speaking, Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. My goodness, we have a lot of texts and comments, and I do appreciate it. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Let's get right to it. How can anyone ever take the UK as being serious in any way, shape, or form? They've allowed over 80 Sharia courts to be allowed within their nation. How is that for assimilation? Then down in Texas, there's an investigation into a Sharia court that's been rumored to have started. Assimilation is not an option in the United States. Some people just don't understand that, and they fight for the wrong people. Comment from a different viewer. It's time for a trade deal with France. The Democrats would get along great with Macron. The Democrats, for nothing, they're free. The Democrats for nothing, for free. Trade them to France. Fair enough. Comment from a different viewer. Imagine a ground war in Iraq. The only way you could tell who is on your side is if the gun is not pointed at you. Thank you. Comment from a different viewer. Morning, Frank. Well, good morning. The Democrats are showing their irrational thoughts again. They speak against Trump getting Iran while Iranians worldwide are celebrating. This should tell the voters all they need to know about the irrational Democrats against anything Trump if it's supported by millions of people. They're pro-criminal, pro-Maduro, pro-fraud, not American values. Comment from a different viewer. Pre-New York State discussion, okay? We need Elon and Doge, not to mention Republicans, to get New York State back in the blue, eliminate Democrat waste, and to implement the return of common sense. We need to get back in the red. We need Republicans to get us back in the red, not the blue. I understand what you mean. Okay, comment from Ken. Wouldn't it be logical for the EU and the NATO countries to offer help to eliminate a threat in their backyard? Unless I have missed it, the only countries that are on board with eliminating the Iranian threat are the Arabians. Thank you, Ken. It does seem, but look, I mean, Britain didn't want to do anything. Won't even let us have our planes there. And then the same about Spain. Okay. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. Clearly, if this was a Democrat president who did this, they would all be singing a different tune. Great show. Well, thank you very much. And I would agree. It would be a completely different tune. They wouldn't be demanding that the president go to Congress. I know that because they never did under Biden or under Obama. Okay. Let's go to some New York State issues. Yesterday, state and local leaders called for stronger commitment to local roads and bridges. I just wanted to pass this along to you. I received the press release late yesterday. There's a picture of everybody gathered around. Tom O'Mara, Phil Palmisano, Chris Friend, Joe Sempolinski, Dan Mandel, John Buckley. It sounds like a who's who of Frankly Speaking guests, if you ask me. And other local leaders today called on Governor Hochul and the Democrat leaders of the state legislature to provide increased, critically needed state aid for local roads and bridges in the final 2026-2027 state budget. Now, during this press conference, let me get to the right screen. At the Big Flats Town Highway Garage, the group of state and local leaders called on the governor and legislative leaders to keep strengthening New York's commitment to local transportation infrastructure. In a letter to Hochul, with O'Mara, Palmisano, Friend, Sempolinski, and nearly 70 of the Republican legislative colleagues in the Senate and Assembly wrote, in part, quote, more funding is essential to help offset rising construction costs, destabilize the transportation program, and stabilize the transportation program and ensure critical infrastructure projects can move forward. It is unfortunate the executive budget proposes no increase to local roads, bridge, and culvert funding for the fourth year of the 5-year Department of Transportation capital plan. The local system is owned by 1,600 local governments and consists of over 97,000 centerline miles of roadways and 8,600 highway bridges. In our view, the governor's proposal fails to recognize or understand the significant impact inflation is having on local highway departments. Local governments, for the foreseeable future, will continue to struggle to address budgetary demands in the face of the state-imposed property tax cap, rising pension, health care, and highway construction costs, and unfunded state mandates, among other burdens. A stronger state-local partnership is the only solution to meeting the critical investment level needed to maintain and improve local roads, bridges, and culverts. Through the renewed, vigorous, long-term state investment we have outlined, we will finally move toward the renewed, long-term state investment we have outlined, safe and reliable local infrastructure we envision, an infrastructure that will serve as a catalyst for future community and economic development, job creation, and overall public and motorist safety. So thank you for them. I see. On a spreadsheet, red indicates a deficit. I get it. That kind of red. I was thinking you meant politically red. I get it. My apologies. I read it too fast. We had so many comments coming in, but you raised a good point. So this is what the viewer was mentioning. So blue indicates a surplus, red. I get it. Yep, my fault. I understand what you mean now. I was thinking from a political aspect. Okay, New York's green policies could cost you a lot of green. According to the New York Post, Governor Hochul's administration warned that gas prices could soar by $2.23 over the next 5 years as she fuels up the fight with fellow Democrats to try to delay the state's controversial green energy mandates. An eye-opening memo leaked by Hochul's camp details stunning projected fuel costs at the pump and for households if a cap and invest initiative goes into effect as planned under the Empire State's climate laws. New York City households could pay another $2,300 a year in natural gas costs, on top of massive rate increases already put into motion by the national grid. Upstate households, you ready for this? Upstate households would fork over an even more staggering $4,300 per year in those costs, according to the memo. For us to meet the goals on the time frame that was set by the legislature, there's going to be enormous cost to families, Hochul said yesterday about the 2019 climate law, something that we have been screaming about either on this or its predecessor in radio. We know something that Phil Palmisano's been talking about. This is not new information, but see, they put that arbitrary deadline, and now the punishment is here. The climate law mandates that New York's electricity generation be 70% zero emissions by 2030 and 100% green by 2040. But Hochul has admitted those lofty goals are unachievable as large renewable energy projects fail to get off the ground, especially with President Trump's administration refusing to subsidize green initiatives. Okay, so it's Trump's fault. The revelation puts the governor on a crash course with state lawmakers ahead of upcoming budget talks as Hochul plans to negotiate changes to the climate mandates with an eye at pushing back the optimistic deadlines. She's already, now keep that in mind, pushing it back, especially past an election. But it's not looking at this and saying, well, this isn't going to work. We need new ideas. We need to take a step back. No, instead, you've got a scenario where, well, we'll just kick the can down the road a couple more years and deal with this all again in the not too distant future. How the battle plays out could have reverberations in November when Hochul's up for re-election. Even without an additional squeeze, Con Edison, for example, hiked electricity bills on New York City customers by 3.9% this year. We don't have to go through. This is from the New York Post, so it's a little New York City centric. But the memo leaked by Hochul's administration covers the potential costs of cap and invest programs, which would charge fossil fuel companies based on the amount of carbon emissions they spew. Gasoline prices in New York, which currently align with the national $3 per gallon average, would climb above the highest in the U.S. as of Tuesday. California currently has the highest gas prices at $4.66 per gallon. The Empire State's cost by 2031 would be $5.23 based on AAA and the memo's data. Wow. We'd be, by 2031, $5.23. And they spoke with some individual people on the ground. We don't need to get into that. But Hochul has revealed very little about the specifics of her proposal and what it could address, but she's expected to push to stretch the time frame for when companies start to feel the bite, most likely by controlling when the businesses are forced to buy allowances for emissions under the Cap and Invest program. It's going to be a robust conversation, she said. Now, Bruce Blakeman, the GOP gubernatorial nominee, has already signaled he'll make utility costs an election issue. I would hope so, and it's March. But anyway, he promised to repeal the climate law if elected. This is a direct hit on utility bills, plain and simple, he said in a memo. But lefty lawmakers fumed last week at the prospect of Hochul using her power over state budget negotiations to demand changes to the program. Quote, protecting New Yorkers from the current and future multi-billion-dollar impact of climate change is not well-intentioned. It is imperative, said State Senator Pete Harkham. The Chamber's Environmental Conservation Committee, excuse me, not conservative, that's clear. It's time to finally reject the false equivalents put forth by oil and gas industry. All right. We got one other thing on this. We got some other things we can talk about. Feel free to weigh in on anything that we've been discussing this morning. I know I'm just a tad bit late, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.
Month after month, year after year, even decades you've paid into the insurance system. You've done your part. But when you're seriously injured in a car accident or another tragedy, that system turns its back. Insurance companies care more about pumping up profits and stock prices than paying for your medical bills, your lost wages, or your recovery. At WYDC Injury Law, we fight to make them pay what's fair. If you've been hurt in New York or Pennsylvania, call 607-500-HURT. Don't let the insurance companies win.
At the Corning Painted Post High School Learning Center, we provide students with a variety of community-based and academic opportunities and a fresh start. Located on the Corning Community College campus, students earn high school credits and gain real-world experiences through community service, internships, art partnerships, and work opportunities, experiences they value for a lifetime. Our students find a place to reconnect and succeed. The Corning Painted Post High School Learning Center, turning fresh starts into future success.
When a child is fighting a critical illness, one truth touches us all. Every child deserves a childhood. A wish sparks a ripple of hope that transforms communities far and wide. And when we grant wishes together, we create a movement of kindness, strength, and unity. Yay! Become a wishmaker today and be part of a journey that truly changes lives.
Morning, I'm meteorologist Brandon Weathers. Today's wintry mix is expected to stay under a half inch of any sleet and snow, and then the rest of the forecast is warm enough where our precipitation chances are rain rather than any kind of wintry precipitation. Highs today in the upper 30s for the most part, then we'll stay relatively close to that with lows near the freezing point overnight into Wednesday. After that, a dry break, 53, staying mild from there with additional
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. So the New York Post editorial board, as we're talking about New York State issues, and by the way, if you did not hear, I know I said I was going to make this announcement. Big news coming out of New York. The Supreme Court announced that it would keep in place a New York congressional map, overruling a judge who found that the map violated the Constitution by diluting the power of Black and Latino voters. Now, this is coming from the New York Times, so you can tell the way they write that in a biased fashion. What this was an activist judge that wanted to lock in another seat for Democrats. The emergency decision, which was unsigned and did not include a vote count or reasoning, as is typical in such cases, was a victory for Republicans and may help them keep a seat in Congress. Although the court's decision is temporary, allowing the old map to remain in place as legal appeals continue, it means the map will most likely be used for the midterms. Representative Nicole Malatakis, a Republican whose district encompasses Staten Island and parts of South Brooklyn, had filed an emergency application with the Supreme Court asking the justices to pause a state judge's ruling requiring her district line to be redrawn. Such an effort would have endangered her seat. In a statement, Representative Malatakis thanked the justices, writing that they had stopped the voters on Staten Island and in southern Brooklyn from being stripped of their ability to elect a representative who reflects their values. The legal battle focused on control of New York's 11th congressional district, the only district in New York City held by a Republican. It is the latest in a series of mid-cycle redistricting cases to come before the justices on the emergency docket after President Trump urged Republicans to draw new maps that could bolster the party's chances to retain control of the House. Anyway, big win for New York State and Nicole Malatakis. So congratulations. All right, back to some of the things coming out of Albany. Critics have been warning that New York's energy costs are about to soar even higher thanks to the state's insane 2019 climate law. We've been talking about it since day one here on Frankly Speaking. Now a state agency itself is confirming those warnings. As we had mentioned, it puts the price tag on the pain, a whopping $4,100 a year extra per household by 2031. That's $4,100 a year, folks, just for the pleasure of living in New York State. That's just home heating gas, reports the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Gasoline costs are also set to shoot up. At the pump, a gallon of gas is expected to go up by an eye-watering $2.23. Plus, businesses' utility costs could rise 46%, and truck delivery expenses over 60%, sending consumer prices through the roof. Kathy Hochul seems to have recognized at least the political danger of this as she runs for re-election on a promise of affordability. Voters won't find the extra hit particularly affordable, so she appears set to be pushed for changes or delays to the law, at least until after she's safely reelected. Yeah, then I think it goes right back into full force mode. Don't think for a moment we're not going to have to pay this. It's just a matter of when, not if. Sometimes rule changes are needed to fit the times, argues Hochul Budget Director Blake Washington, as if, quote, the times have dramatically changed unpredictably since the law was passed. Truth is, opponents have been flagging its astronomical and pointless cost for years. Last year, even the left-leaning Progressive Policy Institute called it an undeniable failure that's only succeeded in driving up costs for families, constraining reliable supply, and imperiling the political viability of the state's climate agenda. The Climate Act was first championed by ex-Governor Andrew Cuomo before Hochul doubled down on slashing gas emissions by 40% by 2030, with the goal of achieving 100% zero carbon emission electricity by 2040. Yet fantasizing about an alternative reality didn't bring it about. There's a lack of market capacity to deliver the volume of renewable energy for EVs, heat pumps, etc. to meet the requirements called for under the climate law. Notes, NYSERDA. Okay, Hochul has already quietly pushed her new energy tax, the Cap and Invest program for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, past this fall's election. So what she sees it as political reasons. This isn't about actually saving you money. It's so she can run on quote-unquote affordability. She also paused the state's all-electric building mandate, and she sought new modular nuclear power plants upstate. Yet she'll need the legislature's backing even just to delay the law's mandate, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, for one, is already on record opposing any effort, we mentioned this last week, any effort to mess with them. She's already on record. Unless Albany lawmakers get on board and head off the additional costs, voters would be justified in showing them the door come November. A couple other New York State issues, and we can go back. Did you watch the videos of the Epstein deposition, with Bill and Hillary? I saw some of the highlights, but I know that was making its rounds yesterday. That was released by the House Republicans. We also do have a couple of other 2028 issues, and maybe wrap up on some more on Iran. I know we took just a little bit of breather there from Iran, but so much to cover, and we've been covering it all morning, so I'm glad that you've been a part of it with all these great comments and all these great discussions. So stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Accidents happen. If you're looking for an honest, dependable, trustworthy auto repair shop, bring it to Nappy's. Or if it's undrivable, have it towed right to us. It's your choice where to take your vehicle. Nappy's works with all insurance companies and will manage all vehicle calibrations. Nappy's has a state-of-the-art paint booth and a new and improved repair shop. Let our friendly staff of specialists help you through the process and get it done right the first time. Commit to Nappy's, family-owned for 3 generations.
Thank you for your business.
This isn't your library. Create with the 3D printer. Release your inner audio engineer or sewing machine riddles, all with your library card. Go to getyourlibrarycard.com today.
Give kids time. Just 5 minutes a day. Ask them how they're feeling. And listen.
Thousands of North Atlantic right whales used to swim along the east coast of the United States and Canada. Collisions with ships and entanglement in fishing gear are killing these magnificent animals every year. They could go extinct in your lifetime. But there's hope. If we act now, before it's too late, join Oceana to save North Atlantic right whales from extinction.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. All your comments came in right before break. All right, let's try to go through them all in this segment before we get ready to wrap up today's edition. Keep these comments coming in. All right. Call your representatives to get the ball rolling for upstate to become the 51st state. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. As a result of the present war, gas prices have already begun to increase by 6 cents and is expected to continue to rise. Buy your gas today and save some money. Thank you very much. Mark writes in, as far as New York State issues, Governor Hochul says she is going to lower car insurance. Big deal. Why doesn't she lower homeowner insurance? It's a bigger expense. It's all political baloney. And she is really digging for votes. Thank you very much. Comment from Mark continued. Is Hochul crazy raising fuel prices for over $5 a gallon? It will affect everything, food prices and everything transported. Totally ridiculous. People will be leaving New York State in droves. Well, to that point, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. If people would do a little research, they would find New York is number 4 on the list of 20 being the most expensive state to live in. Thank you very much. And good morning, Frank. It's just depressing knowing that the citizens of the state are under the total control of the downstate liberal Democrats, and we are helpless to get rid of them. Sadly, I'm considered moving to a different state. And we had those polls that we've been talking about for a long time where people are actually, the majority of New Yorkers have a kind of a 5-year plan, whether it's they're waiting on retirement, they're waiting for some things to change in their family like that. So very interesting. Those numbers continue to grow, and it should come as no surprise. Hey, did you see, though, that the New York politicians are focused on what's important to you? As you say, oh, I think I'm going to leave the state. It's so expensive. You're talking about major, serious issues. Well, New York politicians are pushing to ban the sale of non-stick cookware featuring a, quote, forever chemical. But even California Governor Gavin Newsom balked at a similar bill in his state, calling it a costly crackpot idea. The Federal Drug Administration for decades has approved the chemical's use in cookware. The targeted nonstick cookware is made from, we're just going to call it PTFE, a subset of the synthetic chemical group of PFAs, which critics say are toxic. New York's proposed bill would not only involve pots and pans, but also some architectural paints, car parts, cleaning products, rugs, ski wax, and polish. The bill passed the state Senate on February 10th, but has not yet been taken up for a vote in the Assembly. I remember it is one-party rule in Albany, so it would not be a surprise if this is forced through. The popular and typically cheaper style of pots and pans containing the PFAS coating could be wiped off of store shelves by the start of 2028 under the proposed legislation, which was sponsored by State Senator Peter Harkelham. Hey, we just heard from him earlier. He was outraged that Hochul is thinking of changing some of the climate policy rules. And State Assemblywoman Deborah Glick, the lefty Gavin Newsom of California, whose liberal state is infamous for what industries gripe are wildly over-the-top restrictions, vetoed a similar bill in the fall that would have banned PFAS, suggesting it was anti-consumer and would increase costs. But leave it for California to say, no, this is even a little bit too wild for us, and to New York say, hey, let's embrace it. It's unfortunate that some legislators are choosing to ignore long-established scientific facts by banning products that are 100% safe and have been approved by the FDA specifically to coat nonstick cookware repeatedly since the Kennedy administration, said Steve Burns, president of the Cookware Sustainability Association. He said the compounds used in nonstick cookware are the same as those coating human pacemakers. If it's safe enough to live inside your body, it's certainly safe enough to cook with. Many New Yorkers are struggling to afford food. The last thing they need is a costly ban on the pans they want to cook with. There you are. We got to take a break and then get your last second comments in. We're wrapping up today's edition of Frankly Speaking after this.
What better way to start or end every day than relaxing in your very own Hesselson's hot tub? Massage therapy, relaxation, stress reliever, pain management, soothing muscles, or just spending time with a loved one. Hot water therapy really does make every day better. Hesselson's has been a part of this great community for over 70 years, still being locally owned and operated. So make the drive to Hesselson's and start making your path to a better life today. And after 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Heifer International was born from a simple idea. Instead of giving hungry people a cup of milk, why not give them a cow? 80 years later, this idea has helped more than 46 million families around the world. With the right tools and practices, people can produce their own food, earn better income, and build a brighter future for themselves and our planet. It's not a handout, it's a path out of poverty, the chance for an education, better nutrition, and an opportunity to thrive. Learn more at heifer.org.
Morning, I'm meteorologist Brandon Weathers. Today's wintry mix is expected to stay under a half inch of any sleet and snow, and then the rest of the forecast is warm enough where our precipitation chances are rain rather than any kind of wintry precipitation. Highs today in the upper 30s for the most part, then we'll stay relatively close to that with lows near the freezing point overnight into Wednesday. After that, a dry break, 53, staying mild from there with additional opportunities.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Look at everybody sending in waves right here at the end. I appreciate it. Getting some last-minute waves in there. Mark writes in, one more thing we have to buy in PA, pots and pans. Have a great day. Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And everything... Comment from a different viewer. Maybe someone could start a letter campaign that would send mass quantities of letters to all the representatives in Albany about why they want to leave New York State as soon as possible. If it's true we're losing 1,000 people a week, I'm sure we could get an awful lot of letters to send. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning. Good morning. I thought I heard New York State change insurance point system for driving violations. Doesn't sound like insurance will be going down after all. No, though, and we talked about that when it first broke. I mean, they really got very restrictive. Comment from a different viewer. Hi, Frank. People should think carefully about moving to another Democratic-run state. They're all more expensive than a Republican-run state. Well, thank you very much. And finally, Ken writes in, I can't leave the state for a cheaper, warmer state until, frankly speaking, goes national. Thank you, Ken. That's awful kind of you. I do appreciate that. And we appreciate your taxes. Boy, that does it. We are out of time even. Yes, the Epstein deposition video. Bill Clinton shaking, he's mad. And furious Hillary pounding the table to storm off, saying she's done with this. If you guys are doing this, I'm done. That's in relationship to when Lauren Boebert sent out that picture of Hillary there. You can hold me in contempt from now until the cows come home. This is just typical behavior, she said. Boebert copped to taking a photo of Hillary, but claimed to have done so before the hearing kicked off. Hillary vented that it doesn't matter. We are all abiding by the same rules. It got a little, the videos are out now. Basically, this is a long way for me to tell you the videos are out now. Bill Clinton says he, quote, doesn't believe he was an Epstein honey trap victim, though he did admit during the deposition that he had received a back rub by an associate of Epstein. I think one of the big takeaways that the media has not really covered on this is Democrats pressed Clinton on the relationship with Trump and Epstein. Clinton paused to say, I hate this because I don't think I should inject anything, but I do want to leave the impression. He's the president. Never. This is 20-something years ago. Never said anything to me to make me think he was involved with anything improper with regard to Epstein. As I've said earlier, the only conversation I had with President Trump about this was in the early 2000s, and I have no information that he did anything wrong. Surprising. He volunteered that information. All right, that does it. Wow, how sick is this? Luigi Mangione, remember the man on trial for murder? They're actually releasing a musical about him on New York City stages, and it's to premiere very soon. Luigi the Musical will take the stage at the Green Room 42 in Midtown West on June 15th. A mere 20-minute subway ride from where Mangione allegedly gunned down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And finally, it's AOC or bust for far-left Democrats in 2029, putting all their eggs in one basket. But on the other side of the coin, another article from Axios, centrist Democrats launch a 28 mission, Stop AOC. That does it. Thank you for all the comments. You guys were very chatty this morning. I do appreciate it. It was a lot of fun talking with everyone. Make sure you join us every weekday morning, starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV Big Fox. We will see you tomorrow morning bright and early. I look forward to it already.
I got you. Don't worry, I got you.
Oh, thank you.
Don't worry, I got you. I got you.
Thanks.
Look what I got you.